The first time he kissed my hand, I thought it was old-fashioned charm. A billionaire in a penthouse that looked like a castle. I assumed he kissed every woman's hand like that. I was wrong. He kissed my hand every morning for 3 weeks. Every single morning. And every time, I felt something I couldn't explain. Like his lips were asking a question I didn't know how to answer. He never kissed my lips, not once. He brought me coffee with oat milk because he remembered I liked it. He cooked me breakfast. He drove me home every night just to spend an extra 15 minutes in my presence. But he never kissed me. And then I found the gallery. That's when I learned the truth. He hadn't been waiting 3 weeks. He'd been waiting centuries. This is how I fell in love with a man who knew my face before we ever met. My name is Tess Harper. I'm an art curator. That means I find paintings, I authenticate them, I uncover their stories. I've spent my life believing that art holds pieces of souls, that a brushstroke can capture a feeling so perfectly it lasts for centuries. I didn't know I was about to become part of a story that had been painted long before I was born. The file came to me on a Tuesday. My boss slid it across his desk with a look that said, "Be careful." The client's name was Dominic Wolfe. There was almost nothing in the file, just an address and a photograph of a painting. The painting was unsigned, late Romantic era, a seascape with a rose that shouldn't have survived those waves. My client wanted it acquired, discreetly, immediately. The commission was enough to make my breath catch. "He's a ghost," my boss said. "Collects art like some people collect secrets. Don't let the penthouse fool you. You're walking into a fortress. He's hard to read. If he says no, you smile and leave." I chose my outfit carefully that night. Emerald green, strong, a color that said I wasn't intimidated. I told myself I was preparing for a negotiation. I didn't know I was dressing for the moment my life would change forever. The private elevator opened directly into his penthouse. No hallway, no buffer. One moment I was in a marble lobby, and the next, it was a castle. Not the modern kind, not the minimalist white box penthouses you see in magazines. This was a fortress. Suits of armor stood in the corners, bookshelves carved from dark wood, a fireplace with a mantel that looked like it weighed 1,000 years. And the light, warm, low, strategic, casting shadows that danced across vaulted ceilings. I was so captivated by a tapestry that I didn't hear him approach. "Miss Harper." His voice was low, a rumble that seemed to come from the walls themselves. I turned. His eyes were the color of a winter sky before a snowstorm, and when he looked at me, it wasn't an appraisal, it was recognition, like he had been waiting for me. He didn't shake my hand. He lifted it to his lips, and he kissed the back of it, slowly, deliberately, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "The pleasure," he murmured, "is entirely mine." I told myself it was charm, old-fashioned billionaire charm. I told myself not to read into it. But something had shifted, something I couldn't name. He showed me his collection as we walked. A Degas here, a modern abstract there, a Renaissance Madonna that would have made my old professor weep. Each one was a masterpiece, but they didn't feel like possessions. They felt like part of the architecture, woven into the castle's soul. We stopped before a closed door. He leaned against the frame, his pose casual but his eyes intense. "The painting you seek is in here," he said, "but before we discuss it, I have a condition." I told him I was listening. I was ready for anything, a pricing negotiation, a legal clause, a confidentiality agreement. I wasn't ready for what he actually said. "I don't want it just acquired," he said. "I want it understood. I want you to work on it, here, every morning for the next few weeks. Study it, research it, tell me its story, and then, if I'm satisfied, I'll authorize the acquisition." "You want me to come here every day to work on a painting you already own?" "I want to know if it's worth the fortune I'll be paying for it," he said. "Consider it an extended consultation. Double your usual rate, of course, for the inconvenience to your schedule." It was absurd. Any other client I would have walked, but there was something about the painting I hadn't seen yet, and there was something about him, a puzzle, a mystery. I've never been able to walk away from a mystery. "Fine," I said, "tomorrow, 9 o'clock." He opened the door to his study, and there, on an easel bathed in soft light, was the painting. It was even more breathtaking in person. The artist had rendered the sea with such violence you could almost hear it roaring. The sky was bruised purple and gray, and there, in the center, the rose was a slash of life that shouldn't exist in that chaos. I was so absorbed in the painting that I didn't realize he had moved behind me. I only became aware when I felt the warmth of him at my back. I turned my head. He was inches from my face, his gray eyes fixed on me, not on the painting. I could see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his pupils dilated as he looked at me. For a long moment, neither of us moved, neither breathed. My loop slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. The spell broke. I need to go," I said, stepping back. "I have another appointment." He bent to pick up the loop. He placed it in my palm with deliberate slowness, his fingers brushing mine. He walked me to the elevator, his hand on the small of my back, and when the doors opened, he took my hand again. He lifted it to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. His eyes never left mine. "Until tomorrow, Tess." The days fell into a rhythm I found myself craving. Every morning at 9, he was there, coffee ready, the study warm and lit. He never said much when I arrived. He simply took my hand, kissed my knuckles, and said, "Good morning, Tess." And then he would watch me work. He sat in that chair for hours while I examined the Rousseau. He didn't hover, he didn't interrupt, he simply was there. A quiet, solid presence that made the cavernous study feel smaller, more intimate. I told myself I was imagining the intensity of his gaze. I told myself he was just a client with an unusual interest in art. But then I started noticing things. He found reasons to be near me, standing close while I worked, his shoulder brushing mine, his voice low near my ear when he asked a question. He brought me books from his collection, his fingers brushing mine when I took them. He refilled my coffee, leaning across me to reach the cup, his arm a warm presence behind my back. Each small contact left me breathless. Each stolen glance made my heart stutter, and I began to realize I wasn't just falling, I had already fallen. At night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. I'd lie in bed replaying our conversations, the way his voice dropped lower when he was asking me something personal, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when I made a sharp observation, the way he said my name, Tess, like it was something precious. I started dressing for him, not in obvious ways, just a little more care, a little more color. I wanted him to look at me. I wanted to be the reason his eyes lingered. One morning, I arrived early. The penthouse was quiet, and I assumed he wasn't yet in the study. I walked toward the gallery, intending to wait for him, and I saw him, the real him. He was standing before a painting. I couldn't see which one, but I saw his face. The mask was gone, the unreadable billionaire, the hard-to-read enigma, none of it was there. What remained was a man who looked like he had been waiting for something his entire life, something he wasn't sure he would ever find. When he turned and saw me, his expression shifted instantly. But I had seen, and I would never forget. I arrived at the penthouse to find Dominic not in the study, but standing by the window with a photograph in his hand. His expression was different, lighter, almost eager. "We're going out today," he said. I blinked. "Out?" "Out." He turned to face me, and there was something boyish in his expression. "There's a painting I want to acquire, an estate sale outside the city. I need your expertise." "You have experts, Dominic, whole teams of them." "I want you." The words hung in the air. He didn't look away, didn't soften them with a joke or a qualification. He just let them sit there between us. I should have said no. I had work to do, research to complete, but looking at him, at the rare, unguarded hope in his eyes, I found I couldn't. "Fine," I said, "but only because this painting sounds interesting." He smiled, that real smile I was beginning to crave. His car was waiting downstairs, not the sleek black sedan he usually took. This was an SUV, dark and armored, with tinted windows that made it impossible to see inside. A driver in a suit held the door open. 2 more men in dark jackets stood nearby, their eyes scanning the street. I stopped. "Security?" I asked. Dominic's expression didn't change. Standard. "They're coming with us?" "They go where I go." He said it simply, like it was obvious, and for him it was. I climbed into the back seat. He slid in beside me. The door closed with a heavy thunk, the kind of sound that reminded you this wasn't a normal car. The driver pulled away from the curb. The security team followed in a second vehicle behind us. I watched the city slip past the tinted windows. Dominic watched me. "You're uncomfortable," he said. "I'm not used to being followed." "You get used to it." There was something in his voice. Not bitterness, just exhaustion. "Eventually." I looked at him, really looked. The strong jaw, the sharp cheekbones, the gray eyes that saw everything. But underneath all of that, something else, something tired. "Why did you want to come today, really?" I asked softly. He turned back to me. His gray eyes were soft in a way I hadn't seen before. "Because you're not part of my world," he said. "You don't care about my status or my money. You care about paintings, about stories, about things that matter." He paused. "When I'm with you, I feel like I can breathe." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, but I felt the words settle somewhere deep in my chest, warm and heavy. The estate was 3 hours outside the city, an old manor house buried in the countryside, all crumbling stone and overgrown gardens, the kind of place that held secrets in its walls. The driver pulled up to the entrance. The security team fanned out, checking the perimeter, scanning the crowd, speaking quietly into their wrists. Dominic waited until one of them nodded before he opened his door. He offered me his hand. I took it. "Subtle," I murmured, gesturing toward the security team. "They're discreet. One of them is standing in a rose bush." He looked. One of his men was indeed standing in a rose bush, trying very hard to look like he wasn't. Dominic sighed. "I'll have a word." I laughed. It was the first time I had laughed with him, really laughed, not just a polite smile. He turned to look at me, and something in his expression shifted, softened. "I like that sound," he said quietly. "What sound?" "Your laugh." I felt heat rise to my cheeks. I looked away, but I didn't pull my hand from his. The estate sale was chaos. Antique dealers swarmed the manor like vultures, picking through furniture and frames and forgotten treasures. Dominic moved through them like a ghost, unnoticed, unbothered, his eyes scanning for something only he could see. His security team hung back, blending into the walls, but I saw them watching, always watching. I followed Dominic through room after room, a library with dust-covered books, a drawing room with faded wallpaper, a bedroom with a window seat overlooking gardens that had gone wild. And then he stopped. In the corner of a small study, behind a broken armchair, was a painting. Small, unassuming. A woman sitting by a window, her face half turned, her expression one of quiet waiting. The light through the window was golden, warm, the kind of light that made you feel like you were remembering something rather than seeing it. "This one," Dominic said. I knelt beside it. My curator's eye took over, the brushwork, the pigments, the signature in the corner. "It's unsigned," I said. "Late 18th century, English school. The condition is good, though. No cracking, no fading." "Can you tell who painted it?" I studied it longer, the way the light fell, the softness of the woman's expression. Something about it felt familiar, though I couldn't place it. "I'd need to research it," I said, "but it's beautiful, haunting." Dominic was quiet. When I looked up, he wasn't looking at the painting, he was looking at me. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." He looked away, but not before I saw something in his eyes, something warm. "I want it." We didn't talk about the painting on the drive back. Instead, we talked about everything else. He asked about my childhood, where I grew up, how I fell in love with art. I told him about my grandmother's attic filled with old paintings no one wanted, about the summer I spent restoring a portrait of a woman no one remembered, and how I felt like I was bringing her back to life. He listened, really listened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You see things other people don't," he said. "That's why I wanted you, not just for the Rousseau, for this." "For a painting in a crumbling manor?" "For the way you look at things," he said, "like they matter, like the stories trapped inside them matter." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. But I felt the words settle somewhere deep in my chest, warm and heavy. The driver pulled up to my apartment, the security team's car parked behind us. Dominic walked me to my door, his men hanging back at a respectful distance, but watching. At the entrance, he took my hand. He lifted it to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. His lips lingered. "Thank you," he said, "for today." "You don't have to thank me, it's my job." "It's not your job to make me feel like I'm not alone." His eyes met mine. I stood there, my hand still in his, my heart pounding. The city hummed around us. Somewhere in the shadows, his security team waited. "Good night, Dominic," I whispered. "Good night, Tess." He waited until I was inside before he turned and walked back to his car. 3 days later, his car was waiting outside my apartment. Not a text, not a call, just the dark SUV and the driver holding the door open. One of the security team, the one who had stood in the rose bush, nodded at me. "Mr. Wolfe sends his regards," he said. "There's a private collection in the city. He thought you might want to see it." I climbed into the back seat. Dominic was already there. "You could have called," I said. "I wanted to see your face when I asked." "Asked what?" He handed me a file. Inside was a photograph of a painting, a still life, fruit and flowers, and a single silver cup. The light in the painting was extraordinary, alive. "The owner is difficult," he said. "She doesn't like anyone, but she might like you." I looked at the photograph again. The way the light hit the silver cup, a glint, a reflection, that made the whole painting feel like it was breathing. "Rembrandt's circle," I said. "Not his hand, but someone who studied with him." "I know." "You don't need me to authenticate this. You already know what it is." He was quiet for a moment, then, "I need you to talk to her." The collection was in a townhouse in the oldest part of the city. Narrow stairs, dark hallways. The owner was an elderly woman with sharp eyes and sharper opinions. But she looked at me differently. "You're a curator," she said, studying me over her glasses. "Not a hired gun." "I'm both," I said, "but I only acquire paintings that deserve to be seen." She smiled. It was the first smile I had seen from her. "Show me what you see." The painting was in her bedroom, hanging above her fireplace, covered in dust, almost forgotten. I examined it, the brushwork, the pigments, the signature barely visible in the corner. "This is extraordinary," I said. "The light work is unmistakable. It deserves to be seen." The old woman's eyes softened. "My grandmother said it was the only thing worth saving from the war." "It is," I said. "It deserves to be seen, not hidden away." She looked at Dominic, then back at me. "I'll sell it, but only because she asked." Dominic was quiet on the walk back to the car. The security team surrounded us. Not obvious, but there. Always there. "You're angry," I said. "I'm not angry." "You're something." He stopped walking. The team stopped with him, then stepped back to give us space. The street was quiet. Old buildings, old trees, the last light of the day filtering through the leaves. "She didn't like me," he said. "No, she didn't." "Why?" I thought about it. The old woman's sharp eyes, the way she had looked at him like he was a threat. "Because you're used to buying things, not asking. She wanted to be asked." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You saw that. I didn't. That's why you need me." The words came out softer than I intended, more intimate. His eyes met mine, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The security team seemed to fade away. The city seemed to fade away. There was only him. "Yes," he said quietly, "that's why I need you." He didn't kiss my hand that night. Instead, he stood with me on the sidewalk, the old townhouse behind us, the city settling into evening around us. His hand found mine, his fingers interlaced with mine. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For seeing what I can't." I squeezed his hand. His squeezed back. One of his security team cleared his throat softly, a reminder that the world was still there, that we weren't alone. But for a moment, just a moment, it had felt like we were. And in that moment, standing on a quiet street with no paintings between us, I realized something. I was falling for him. He started escorting me home. Every evening, when I packed up my things, he would appear in the doorway of the study. "I'll take you," he said. It wasn't a question. "I can take the subway." "My car is downstairs. I want to take you home. It makes sense." He said it like it was logistics, efficiency, but when he walked me to the elevator, his hand found the small of my back. When we reached the lobby, his car was already waiting, and when he opened the door for me, his eyes met mine with something that looked like hope. During the drive, he asked about my day, not the polite, surface-level questions clients ask. He asked about the Rousseau, about my theories, about the tiny details I had noticed in the brushwork. He listened like my answers mattered, like I was the only thing in the room worth hearing. I found myself talking for the entire ride, telling him about my first restoration, about the thrill of uncovering a hidden signature, about the way a painting could feel like a conversation across centuries. He didn't interrupt. He just watched me with that quiet intensity, his hand resting on the seat beside mine, close enough to touch. When the car pulled up to my apartment building, the security team already in position, he walked me to my door. At the entrance, he took my hand. He lifted it to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. His lips lingered a moment longer than necessary. "Good night, Tess." I watched him walk back to the car. I stood in my doorway until the SUV's taillights disappeared around the corner. The next morning, I opened my apartment door to find him leaning against the frame. He was holding 2 cups of coffee. His expression was one of faint amusement, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. "You didn't think I'd let you take the subway, did you?" "You can't just show up at my apartment." "I just did." He held out a coffee. "Get your things. We have a painting to analyze." I found myself smiling. "You're impossible." So I've been told. From that morning on, his car was waiting outside my building every day. I'd climb in, and he'd be there, immaculate in his suit, a coffee ready for me. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we sat in comfortable silence, but always when the car pulled up to the spire, he'd take my hand and press a kiss to my knuckles before we got out. I started noticing the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching. In the study, when I was absorbed in my work, I'd feel his gaze on the back of my neck. I'd look up, and he'd be there, his gray eyes soft, his expression unguarded. He never looked away when I caught him. He just held my gaze, letting me see something I couldn't yet name. One night, he walked me to my door, but instead of saying good night, he stood there, his hands in his pockets, his jaw tight. "Is everything okay?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice so low I almost missed it, "I don't like watching you walk away." My heart stopped. He didn't move. He just looked at me, his gray eyes burning with something raw and unguarded. His hand rose, his fingers hovering near my cheek, not touching, just there, a question. I leaned into the space between us, not enough to close the distance, just enough to let him know I wasn't running. His breath caught. His hand dropped, but his eyes never left mine. "Good night, Tess," he said. His voice was rough. "Good night, Dominic." I went inside, I pressed my back against my door, and I pressed my fingers to my lips, imagining what it would feel like if he had finally closed the distance. One morning I was late. Not by much, 7 minutes. I had been stuck behind a delivery truck that wouldn't move. But when the elevator doors opened into the penthouse, he was already waiting. Not in the study, by the elevator. His jaw was tight. His expression was darker than I had ever seen it. "You're late," he said. "I was stuck behind a 7 minutes." He stepped toward me. His hand found my hand. He lifted it to his lips and pressed a kiss to my knuckles. But this time he didn't let go. His thumb traced circles on my palm. His eyes held mine. 7 minutes, he repeated, his voice now lower. "I was beginning to think you weren't coming." I stared at him, the unreadable billionaire, the man who controlled empires from a castle in the sky. He had been standing by the elevator, waiting for me, counting the minutes. "I'll always come," I said softly. His grip on my hand tightened, just slightly, just enough. "Promise?" "Promise." He exhaled slowly. Some of the tension left his shoulders. He released my hand, but the warmth of his touch lingered. "Good," he said, and then, almost to himself, "Good. From now on, if I can't pick you up myself, I will send my driver." His eyes looking into mine, waiting for me to answer. "Okay, as you wish," I answered. "Thank you," he said. I noticed him acting strange sometimes, as if he wanted to tell me something but then stopped. So I went with the flow and just waited for him to come to me. A few days later, he led me to a door I hadn't noticed before. It was tucked at the end of a corridor, unmarked, easy to miss. "This is my private gallery," he said. "I don't show it to many people." He opened the door and I stepped inside. The room was long and narrow, lit by soft, recessed light, and on the walls, dozens of paintings, dozens, all of them featuring the same two faces. There was a man, dark hair, gray eyes, his expression one of profound longing. He looked exactly like Dominic. And there was a woman, hazel eyes, chestnut hair, the same defiant tilt of her chin. She looked exactly like me. "What is this?" I whispered. He told me he had been collecting these paintings for years, the same two faces appearing across Europe, across centuries. The woman was always creating, the man was always waiting, always searching. He moved closer, his hand lifted, fingers hovering near my cheek, not touching. "I've been dreaming of you for 6 months, Tess." His voice was raw, unguarded. "I thought I was losing my mind. I'd wake up with your voice in my ears, your face in my vision. I couldn't work. I couldn't focus. I hired investigators to find you based on nothing but a face I'd seen in my sleep. That's why you brought me here. The Rousseau, the condition, it was all to get me in this room." "Yes," he said. "I couldn't take it any more. I had to know if you were real, if the connection I felt existed outside of my own head." I looked at the gallery again, the centuries of longing, then back at him. I should have been angry. He had manipulated me, fabricated a professional opportunity to satisfy a personal obsession. But looking into his eyes, those eyes I had seen in a dozen paintings now, I felt only wonder. Now it all makes sense. "I've dreamed of you too," I admitted. His breath caught, his eyes widened. "Not like yours, not vivid, but after Vienna, after restoring a portrait of a prince who looked exactly like you, I dreamed of his face, your face. I thought it was occupational hazard, too much time with a painting." 3 weeks. You spent 3 weeks with my face." I nodded. Imagine my surprise when I first saw you. "And when I finished, I felt like I was leaving something behind. I just didn't know it was you." He pulled me into his arms, his face buried in my hair, his body shaking. We stood like that for a long time, his arms around me, my face pressed to his chest, his heart beating against my ear, fast, strong, real. He pulled back, his hands framed my face, his forehead pressed to mine. "I'm not asking you to believe in fate. I'm not asking you to accept that we're some kind of reincarnated souls destined to find each other. I'm asking you to believe in this, in us, in the woman who steals olives from my kitchen and the man who watches her work for hours because he can't look away. I love you, Tess." His voice cracked. "I think I've been loving you for centuries. I think I've been waiting for you my whole life," I whispered. For a long moment, neither of us moved. His forehead was pressed to mine, his breath mingled with my breath, and I could feel it, the pull between us, the gravity, the inevitability of what was about to happen. His thumb traced my cheekbone, my lips parted. He tilted his head, his lips brushed the corner of my mouth. So close, so impossibly close. I could feel the warmth of him, the promise of what was waiting if I just closed the distance. I wanted it. God, I wanted it. I wanted us to finally cross the line we had been dancing around for 3 weeks. But he stopped. His forehead was still against mine. His jaw was tight. His voice was barely a whisper. "Not yet. When I kiss you, I want you to know everything, to choose me with open eyes." I wanted to tell him that I already knew, that I had already chosen him, but I understood what he was offering. Not a rushed moment of passion, not a stolen kiss. He was offering me his whole truth, and he wanted me to take it with my eyes open. "Then show me the rest," I said, "all of it." He smiled, a real smile, unguarded, the first full smile I had ever seen on him. He showed me everything after that, every painting, every journal entry, every thread of research he had uncovered over the years. We worked side by side, day after day, uncovering a story that stretched across 500 years. And somewhere in those days, the waiting stopped feeling like waiting. It started feeling like building, like laying a foundation for something that would last longer than either of us. 3 weeks after I first walked into his penthouse, he was waiting for me with a look I hadn't seen before. Nervous. The unflappable Dominic Wolfe looked nervous. He led me to the gallery, and there, at the end of the timeline, was a painting I hadn't seen before. It had arrived the day before. He had been waiting to show me. It was me, again, but this one was different. The artist had painted me not as a muse, not as a dream. He had painted me as I was, fierce, defiant, unwilling to wait any longer. I turned to face him. His eyes were on me, his hands at his sides, waiting. He looked at me like he was stating a fact. I love the way you bite your lip when you're concentrating. I love the way you laugh when you solve a puzzle. I love the way you argue with paintings like they can hear you. I love the way you look at me like I'm worth looking at. He stepped closer. He took my hands. He pressed them to his chest. I love you, Tess Harper, not because of some painting, not because of some curse, because you're brilliant and fierce, and you make me want to be the man who finally reaches the shore. I was crying, but I was smiling. I love you too, I said. I love the way you remember everything I tell you. I love the way you cook for me, like taking care of me is something you want to do, not something you have to. I love the way you look at me when you think I don't see, like I'm something precious. His forehead pressed to mine. His breath shuddered. I love you, I whispered. I think I've been waiting for you my whole life. He tilted his head, and I felt his lips press against my forehead. Soft, lingering, a seal on everything we had said and everything we hadn't. It was a kiss of reverence, of promise, of everything he had been waiting to give me and everything I had been waiting to receive. He pulled back. His eyes were bright. His voice was low. I've been dreaming of you for 6 months, and now you're here, and I'm never letting you go. I'm not going anywhere. He kissed my forehead again, then my temple, then the corner of my mouth, still not my lips, still waiting, still letting me set the pace. Our foreheads pressed together, both of us breathing, both of us smiling. Show me the rest, I whispered, the paintings we haven't solved, the journals we haven't read, all of it. He smiled. His hands found mine. We have time, he said. And for the first time, I let myself believe that some mysteries didn't need to be solved. Some mysteries just needed to be lived. The mystery of the paintings remains unsolved. The thread that connects us across centuries remains unexplained. But standing wrapped in his arms, I found I didn't need answers. I had him, and that was more than enough. This is how I fell in love with a man who knew my face before we ever met. This is how I learned that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're meant to be lived.